wonder if you have ever gotten to a place in your life where you felt like you've had something under control, whether it was anxiety, anger, overwhelm, your sensitivity in general, and then something happens and you're like, maybe I hadn't gotten anywhere at all because I'm back to this familiar place that feels uncomfortable and like kind of more out of control, right? And if you say yes to that, then you are very much not alone. And I thought we could use this episode of the podcast to talk about exactly that. All right, so we are talking about kind of feeling like you get to a place in your life and something happens and you're derailed in some way and you think, maybe I hadn't grown or healed as much as I thought, because if I had, surely I wouldn't be experiencing this right now. And that might happen when we have perhaps had some kind of like anxiety in the past and we feel like we've got a handle on that and we're kind of cruising along okay. And then something happens and all of a sudden we're back in the anxiety or back in the panic or back in the overwhelm or back in the anger or back in whatever, right? And this has happened to me like literally so many times over my life that I'm not even sure I could count them. And it's something that I hear from clients quite often too, where we feel like we've, taken somewhat of a journey, for want of a better word, and we have gotten to a place that feels better than where we were. And then something happens and we feel like we've traveled all the way back to where we started, or at least part of the way back to where we've started. And when that happens, we can feel really bad, right? We can be so self-critical. We can drop into spirals of overthinking and trying to analyze, like, how did I get here? And it can feel really bad. I think sometimes this pops up when we have perhaps like learned to be more self-compassionate, and then something happens and we find ourselves really stuck in self-criticism, or like the anxiety that I mentioned earlier. Maybe we've kind of gotten to a place where we don't feel so anxious, and then something happens and we feel like we are a ball of nerves more often than not. I think that the challenge with this is that it can feel so much like we're broken, and it can feel so much like what we did between those 2 points in time was not as good as we thought, or not as overall growth oriented as we thought. And that can be really disappointing, because there's nothing like feeling as though you blindsided yourself. I thought I had gotten here and it turns out that I'm actually still back there. But what I want to point out to you today is that this is actually really normal, and it happens to everyone. And I want to give you a way of thinking about this that maybe will feel a little easier to hold and a little easier to be kind to yourself when it does happen. So I want you to think about drawing two pictures, and, if you're driving, just, hold this for later. But I want you to either in your mind's eye or on a piece of paper, draw two pictures. One of them, I want you to think of a spiral, but I want you to think of what it would look like to draw it from above. So when you draw a spiral from the top, it kind of just looks like circles, right? Kind of circles that are spinning the drain a little bit. And then I want you to draw that same spiral, but draw it viewed from the side. And what you'll notice is if you start that spiral from the bottom, that, it's kind of crossing familiar territory, but it is moving upward and expanding exponentially. Now, I saw this image in Adam Grant's book, Hidden Potential, and I loved it. It wasn't the first time I've come across the idea, but it was the first time I'd come across the way that he drew these pictures, and I really, really liked it. So if we think about a spiral viewed from the side, it circles these familiar landscapes, right? It kind of keeps going round and round, but it's also going up. And I think that is a much more kind and realistic way to think about our growth over time as humans than the same spiral viewed from above, which can make it deceptively look like we're literally just spinning the drain, right? We're just kind of going back over the same stuff over and over again without any growth, without any change, without any evolution, which just isn't true. And And I think this is just such a beautiful image to hold in your mind, because they're the same thing viewed from different angles. And when we're in a period of time where it feels like we might be spinning the drain, it can be easy to believe that that's true. But here's the truth. You're never actually revisiting exactly the same territory as exactly the same person, like at all, right? You cannot be revisiting exactly the same scenario as exactly the same person ever, really, because every single day we are shifting and changing and have new experiences to add to our toolkit. And it can feel very much like we just kind of repeat patterns. And to some extent that may be true in some periods of our lives. But if we're making this kind of conscious effort to be more kind to ourselves, to be more compassionate towards ourselves, to kind of navigate these other things like anxiety and overwhelm and self-criticism with, some concerted effort, then we aren't spinning the drain, even on those days where it feels like you've gone, 4 steps forward, 5 steps back. So I want to offer that to you as a really simple thing today, a really simple tool for those days where you feel like, how did I get back here, right? How did I end up back here? If you can view it as a spiral, then maybe it's an invitation to be kind to yourself, to offer yourself compassion. Here I am in a familiar landscape, but I'm not the same. And I have tools that are different than they were before. I am more practiced at using them. And so how can I use this time as an invitation to just recognize my humanity and to go, oh yeah, this is part of being human. But then also to ask yourself, what is it that I might need here from myself, from someone else, from society? What is it that I might need to support me to just continue that spiral upward? So that's it. And that's really all I want to share today. I would love to hear if that is a helpful little thought for you. Now, before I go, I do want to tell you about an exciting little series of sorts that's coming up on the podcast. I think I talked about this quite a few episodes ago, and it hadn't happened yet, but it is a little bit more happening in real time now. So we will bring it up again. I'm going to do a series of conversations here on the podcast with fellow highly sensitive people to talk about, what is life like for you as a highly sensitive person? How has that played out over your life? What accommodations have you made to, work with your sensitivity, and where has your sensitivity, maybe even felt like a bit of a liability? And then how have you learned to be more kind and compassionate towards that part of you? So that's coming up. But I did also want to say that if you're a highly sensitive person listening and you want to share your story or parts of your story, reach out, because I would love to have more of these conversations. I would love to chat with you. And I think that part of what I'm really enjoying at the moment with my work and with this conversation around high sensitivity is just recognizing how important our stories are and how much we as humans crave sort of seeing ourselves in other people's experiences, because we have so much shared humanity, right, in the way that we see the world and respond to the world. And yet sometimes it can feel like we're very, very alone. And so I think that hearing other people's stories and being able to say, oh, me too, right? Or, maybe not that, but that other part of your story is so in line with how I experience the world, and it makes me feel seen to know that that's not just me. So if you're interested in doing that, you can send me a DM over on Instagram. You can leave a comment if you are here on YouTube, or you can send me an email, and I'll pop links for all of those things into the show notes. All right, until next time, keep being kind to yourselves, embrace that high sensitivity of yours, and I will see you soon.